Our next lesson focuses on purchases, which is all about receiving inventory into your canteen or restaurant. Remember, all values should be VAT or tax exclusive unless otherwise stated. Also note that all these spreadsheets, documents, and policies have been tailor-made for and paid for by clients, and as such, these documents cannot be distributed to you as part of this course. However, we can show you the relevant sections for educational purposes. Here's the step-by-step process. Step 1. The supplier delivers stock with an invoice. The quantities must be checked and confirmed by a manager or assistant, and the invoice should be stamped and signed as proof of delivery, or POD. Let's take a closer look at an invoice and go through it in more detail. An invoice is made up of two important sections. First, we have the invoice details, which include the supplier name, the document type, in this case, an invoice, the customer name, which is your company, a document number, an order number, a delivery date, and an invoice date, a VAT or tax number, a total value, excluding VAT or tax, a total value for VAT, and an invoice total amount. The second section is for the item details. This section has all the details for the specific products received. This will include the product code, the product name and pack size, the quantities per pack received, the price of the product, either by pack size or total items received, the total excluding VAT or tax, the total tax charged, if applicable, and lastly, the total including VAT or tax. Once the quantity and quality of the stock received is checked by the manager or storeroom controller, the invoice must be stamped, signed, and a receiving date must reflect on the invoice. This is to confirm that the stock has been received in a good condition. This process is governed by a receiving products policy, ensuring all food is checked for proper conditions upon arrival, which we will cover in a few minutes. Step 2 in the purchases process is to add the invoice to your weekly purchases analysis, WPA. The WPA should contain all the invoices, credit notes, and debit notes for your current trading week, including the invoices received on the day you take your closing stock. This is also an ideal time to check and confirm pricing with your buying manual. Your company's buying manual shows you the agreed prices you should be paying for all your items. If you don't have access to your buying manual, you could use the prices from your previous week or previous month's stock sheet for this check. And if you find abnormal price increases on any products, consider informing your area or regional manager. This step also adheres to a purchasing policy, which states that food should only be purchased from approved vendors to assure quality and pricing consistency. Let's take a closer look at what the requirements are for a WPA. The WPA should include your unit name, your unit's code, which you can get from your area or regional manager if applicable, the unit manager's name, a unique WPA number. This is important should you receive any queries from your head office, the month you are processing for, the week ending date, and the number of trading days for the week. Next, you should record all the invoice details, including the invoice date, the invoice number, the order number, the supplier name, the total invoice including VAT or tax, the total VAT or tax value of the invoice. The total excluding VAT or tax should be allocated to one of the following columns relating to your invoice: food expense, taxable or non-taxable, and non-food or other expenses. A quick rule of thumb to use if you are not sure what products belong to food or non-food items is to ask yourself, has this product been costed for in the menu costings? If your answer is yes, then allocate it to the food expense column, or if no is your answer, then allocate it to the other expense column. You should also include a description of this expense. The WPA should also show the totals for all the invoices combined per column. We will be using the totals excluding VAT in the next step. Speaking of the next step in this process, let's move on to the stock sheet. Step 3 is to add the line items details from the supplier invoice by product to your stock sheet. It's crucial to ensure that the total purchases balance to the stock sheet purchases. The stock sheet is where you would calculate your theoretical consumption of stock by using the following formula: opening stock plus purchases minus closing stock. Let's take a closer look at a stock sheet. A stock sheet is a list of all your units stock, usually by storage area, as this document can be used as a count sheet for your physical stock at the end of your trading week. It should contain the following columns: the product name, the unit of measure. This should be the smallest quantity in which you count your stock and issue your stock. For example, if you purchase milk in a 10-liter or 10-gallon container, your UOM should be 1 liter or 1 gallon, as this is how you would count and issue your inventory. The next column is your price per unit of measure. Using our milk example, if your purchase price is $50 for the 10-liter or 10-gallon, your price per unit of measure is 50 divided by 10, which will be 5 in this case. Next, we have the opening stock quantity and value per product. When you create your current week's stock sheet from the previous week's stock sheet, it will contain the latest closing stock quantity and value per product. You should copy the entire closing stock quantity column and paste it into the opening stock quantity column, and ensure that the total value for that column balances to the closing stock value before starting with the current week's purchases. Remember that you start your current trading week with the stock you have left over from the previous week. The next columns are for your purchases quantity and values. This is for you to record your current week's invoice item details and ensure that all the item details from the invoices on the WPA reflect on your stock sheet accurately. In order to do this efficiently, record the line items one invoice at a time, one line at a time, and ensure your running total on the stock sheet balances to the sum of all the relevant invoices appearing on the WPA. If you perform this process for a few invoices per day, you should be able to complete this task by 2 days after your week ending date. The next columns are for your closing stock quantity and values. We will cover this in a bit more detail in the closing stock lesson. Once all the product lines and closing stock take lines have been processed for all your various storage areas, the stock sheet will calculate your theoretical consumption value, which will be used to compare your issue sheet value, which we'll cover in the issue sheet or usage sheet module. Let's look at the stock receiving process using StockFlow, an online program for food and beverage inventory management. From the left-hand navigation menu, click on the Purchases option. On the right-hand side, click the button that says New Transaction. Record all the invoice details, including the week ending date, the transaction type, the name of the supplier, the invoice date and the receive date, the invoice number, the order number, the total amount excluding VAT or tax, and the total VAT or tax amount. The total amount including VAT will be calculated for you, and you will see a running total in bold appear. Now it's time to capture the line item details. You have the option to process each line item by pack size or by the unit of measure. First, select the product name. This will auto-complete the fields for pack size, unit of measure, and the price based on the latest invoice processed for the selected supplier. Next, input the quantity received and check and confirm the price is correct. Change the price input if need be. Select the Add VAT or No VAT option for this product. Use the product name on invoice field if the product name on the invoice is different from the product name on the system. This name will appear on the purchase orders when we get to it. Click on the Add Line item to add this line to the invoice. The system will alert you if there are any variances found in pricing. Click OK to continue. Once the line item has been added to the invoice, your running total balance will change. Repeat the steps for all the line items on your invoice. Once all the line items have been added correctly, the running total should be 0, and the Save button will now be active. Click Save to add the invoice to the system. To view your list of invoices, close this window and navigate to the Purchases screen. Select the trading period to see all the invoices processed for the selected date range. This is effectively your purchases analysis for that trading period.
That covers the purchases admin processing. Now let's look at a few excerpts from official policies governing the receiving of goods. If the company you work for has their own policies in place, then those policies supersede these examples. If not, you can use this information as guidelines on how to receive stock into your unit. General principles. Receive only one delivery at a time from approved suppliers. Verify credentials of the delivery person. Check to make sure frozen food is solid and does not show evidence of thawing and refreezing. Check to ensure that refrigerated foods are received at or below acceptable temperature. Record the date received on the outside of each package and a use-by date if applicable. Remove potentially hazardous foods from the temperature danger zone and place in storage as quickly as possible. Accept only pasteurized dairy products. Reject potentially hazardous foods that are not at acceptable temperature. Reject foods with damaged packaging, such as torn bags or cans with swollen tops or bottoms, leakage, incomplete labels, flawed seals, rust, or dents. Evaluate quality of products by odor, sight, and touch. Reject unacceptable products. Products must meet order specifications and quality requirements. If any foods are deemed unacceptable, they should be rejected and returned to the supplier for credit. Assess quantity of delivered foods meets purchase order information. If foods must be delivered during non-operating hours, the vendor should be an approved source and product inspected as soon as possible. Check that required temperatures have been maintained and product is unadulterated, is quality and quantity ordered, and is protected from contamination. Receiving frozen and refrigerated foods. Check temperature with a calibrated thermometer to assure that cold foods, especially potentially hazardous foods, foods in which microorganisms are able to grow rapidly, often moist, high in protein, and have a neutral or slightly acidic pH, are below accepted temperature. Reject, with the exception of fresh shell eggs or milk, acceptable temperature, all foods that should be stored below acceptable temperature that are delivered above unacceptable temperature. Note, milk should be cooled to below acceptable temperature within 4 hours. Check at random the temperature of 3 different refrigerated food items for each delivery. Record date, employee initials, vendor, product name, and temperature of these products in the receiving temperature log. Place foods in the proper storage area, cooler or freezer, quickly to avoid potential bacterial growth. Use first-in, first-out FIFO inventory rotation of products in all storage areas to assure that the oldest products are used first. Products with the earliest use-by or expiration dates are stored in front of products with later dates. Mixing old food with new food is not acceptable. Keep products in the original package until used. Receiving dry goods. Check dry goods for leaks, flaws, or broken packages. Dry goods should be dry, free of mold, and free of insects. If the packages are flawed, they should be rejected and put in a designated area for credit. Inspect cans for leaks, dents, bulges, or other visible signs of damage. Notify a manager if a damaged can is found. Date boxes and cans with a receiving date. Separate chemicals from foods. Check the delivery invoice against the items delivered and the purchase order. When damaged items are found, the manager or designated employee should call the distributor so the product can be picked up and returned and a credit issued. Note on the invoice any items rejected. Proper dry storage temperatures are between acceptable temperatures at 50 to 60% humidity. The project or catering manager will assure that all foods come from approved vendors and sources. Schedule deliveries for off-peak hours and make sure trained staff are available to receive, inspect, and store food promptly. Assure that no home-prepared foods are accepted or used. Check receiving temperature log to ensure proper procedures are being followed. Follow up with staff as necessary.
That's it for the purchases lesson. Now that the received stock is in your storerooms, let's move on to the next module for issue sheets or usage sheets, which is all about how to track the movement of stock from your storerooms and cold rooms into the various departments at your unit for preparation.